The rain started before sunset. It rolled in like a warning, thick clouds swallowing the orange sky above the small town. The air turned heavy, charged, the kind that pressed against your chest and made breathing feel deliberate. Amara stood in the backyard, pulling clothes off the line before the first drop hit. The wind whipped her faded dress against her legs as thunder cracked across the sky. She moved quickly, folding damp fabric into a plastic basin. Inside the house, her aunt's voice pierced through the wooden door. "Amara, where is my tea?" "I'm coming," she answered, balancing the basin on her hip. She was always coming, always running, always responding. At 22, Amara had lived 6 years in this house. 6 years since the accident. 6 years since headlights and screeching brakes had taken both her parents in one brutal night. She still remembered the hospital corridor, the smell of antiseptic, the doctor not meeting her eyes. She had been 16 then, clutching her mother's scarf, waiting for someone to say it wasn't true. No one did. Her uncle had stepped forward, placing a heavy hand on her shoulder. "You'll stay with us," he had said. She thought it was kindness. It wasn't. The rain began in full force just as she stepped into the kitchen. Water slammed against the zinc roof, loud enough to rattle dishes. Her aunt sat at the small dining table scrolling through her phone, lips pressed thin. "My tea is cold," she snapped without looking up. "I just made it," Amara said softly. "Are you arguing with me?" "No, Ma." Amara turned back toward the stove to reheat it, her movements careful. Everything she did in this house had to be careful. Too slow, she was lazy. Too fast, she was careless. Too quiet, she was suspicious. Too loud, she was disrespectful. There was no correct version of herself here. Her uncle sat in the corner chair, newspaper open, pretending to read. He rarely intervened. His silence was a language she understood too well. The tea was reheated. She placed it gently before her aunt. Her aunt took one sip and sighed dramatically. "Electricity bills are rising. Food is expensive. And here you are, still eating like you contribute something." Amara lowered her gaze. She worked part-time at a small tailoring shop in town, but most of her earnings were taken for household expenses. She kept only coins, enough to buy soap, sometimes bread. "I can try to find more work," she offered. Her aunt laughed, sharp, humorless. "With what qualifications? You barely finished secondary school." The words stung because they were half true. After her parents died, finishing school had been a miracle. Further education, impossible. The rain grew louder. Her aunt suddenly pushed the cup away. "You're too old to still be here." The words didn't register at first. "What?" Amara asked quietly. "I said you're too old. 22. Do you expect to stay here forever?" Her uncle shifted but didn't speak. I thought." Amara's voice faltered. "I help here." "You help?" Her aunt scoffed. "You eat. That is what you do." The room felt smaller. The thunder seemed closer. Her aunt stood abruptly and walked to the hallway. When she returned, she carried a small worn travel bag. Amara's heart dropped. "That's not." "It is." Her aunt cut in. "Pack your things." The rain pounded harder, as if the sky itself objected. "Where will I go?" Amara whispered. Her aunt shrugged. "You're an adult. Figure it out." Her uncle finally spoke, voice low. "Maybe let her stay until morning. It's raining." Her aunt's glare silenced him instantly. "If she stays tonight, she stays forever." Amara felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not panic, just clarity. She walked slowly to the small room she had occupied, a converted storage space barely wide enough for a narrow bed and metal trunk. She knelt beside the trunk and opened it. 2 dresses, 1 pair of sandals, a small notebook, and her mother's scarf. She picked up the scarf gently, pressing it to her face. It still carried a faint trace of lavender soap, or maybe that was memory playing tricks. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she didn't know if she meant it for leaving, for surviving, or for not being stronger. When she stepped back into the living room, her bag was packed. Her aunt walked to the door and opened it. Cold wind rushed in, spraying rain across the floor. Amara hesitated, not because she believed they would stop her, but because stepping out meant admitting there was no coming back. Her uncle avoided her eyes. Her aunt folded her arms. And so Amara stepped into the storm. The door shut behind her with a final click. The rain swallowed everything. Within seconds, her hair clung to her face. Her thin dress soaked through, heavy against her skin. Water filled her sandals as she walked down the muddy road leading away from the only home she had known since losing her parents. She didn't cry at first. Shock is merciful like that. The town looked different at night. Shadows stretching long, streetlights flickering weakly. Most houses were dark. No one would open their doors to a drenched girl with nowhere to go. She kept walking. Each step felt uncertain, but standing still felt worse. After 20 minutes, the tears came. They mixed with rain, indistinguishable. "I'm trying," she murmured to no one. "I really am." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the road ahead for a brief second. Empty. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since morning. The tailoring shop wouldn't open until 9. She couldn't sleep outside it like a stray animal. Another clap of thunder shook her. Her legs began to ache. The bag strap dug into her shoulder. The road curved toward a larger paved street leading out of town, toward neighborhoods she had only seen from a distance. Big gates, security posts, long driveways, worlds away from her reality. But tonight she had no world, so she walked toward the unknown. The rain softened slightly, but exhaustion hit her all at once. Her steps slowed, her vision blurred. The streetlights ahead glowed like halos. "I can't stop," she whispered. But her body didn't care about determination. Her knees buckled. She stumbled to the side of the road near a tall gated estate, catching herself on the metal fence. The cold iron steadied her for a moment. Cars passed occasionally, headlights flashing by without slowing. She slid down against the gate until she was sitting on the wet pavement. For the first time that night, fear crept in. What if no one came? What if this was how her story ended? Not dramatically, just quietly, unnoticed. The rain dripped from her lashes. Her mother used to say, "Storms never last forever," but storms felt endless when you were inside them. Amara pulled the scarf around her shoulders and closed her eyes, just for a second, just to gather strength. She didn't hear the low hum of an approaching engine. She didn't see the sleek black car slowing down. She didn't know that this exact moment, soaked, exhausted, abandoned, would be the last night she would ever feel completely alone. The headlights stopped directly in front of the gate, and fate took a breath. The engine purred like something alive. Low, controlled, expensive. The black Rolls-Royce Phantom slowed as it approached the iron gates of Coleview Estate, a private residential compound owned by one of the most powerful men in the country. Inside the car, Ethan Cole barely looked up from the glowing tablet in his hand. 33 years old, founder and CEO of Coltech Global, a logistics and AI infrastructure empire spanning 3 continents. A man who built himself from nothing and trusted no one. His life was precision. Schedules mapped down to minutes. Meetings stacked back to back. Investments calculated. Risks measured. Emotions, unnecessary variables. "Sir," his driver Malik said carefully, easing his foot on the brake. "There's someone by the gate." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. He hated disruptions. Security should handle it. "There's no one at the post yet. Looks like a girl." Ethan's eyes lifted, irritated more than curious. Then he saw her. Through the rain-streaked window, under the harsh white headlights, sat a small figure against the iron gate. Soaked, still, not begging, not waving for help, just sitting there. Something about that bothered him. Most people in need made noise. They knocked. They pleaded. They demanded. She did none of those things. The rain hit harder, drumming against the roof. Ethan stared for a few seconds longer than necessary. "Wait," he said quietly. Malik hesitated. "Sir, it could be a setup." "I said wait." The car idled. The girl shifted slightly, as if trying to stand but failing. Her hand clutched a small bag. She looked exhausted. Not manipulative. Not strategic. Just tired. Ethan exhaled slowly. Unlock the door. Sir. Malik. The driver fell silent and pressed the control. The soft click of the door unlocking sounded louder than the thunder. Ethan stepped out. Rain immediately soaked his tailored charcoal suit. But he didn't flinch. He rarely reacted to discomfort. He walked toward her with steady steps, shoes splashing through shallow puddles. Up close, she looked even younger than he expected. Her skin glistened with rain, hair plastered to her face. She looked up slowly, startled. Their eyes met, and for one suspended second the world narrowed. Her eyes were not pleading. They were guarded, strong. Ethan crouched slightly to be level with her. Are you hurt? He asked. His voice was deep, controlled, carrying authority even when softened. She shook her head, swallowing. No. Her voice was hoarse, either from crying or cold. Then why are you sitting in the rain? A pause. She hesitated, like someone calculating how much truth was safe. I don't have anywhere else to sit. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just factual. Ethan felt something unfamiliar. Not pity. Not exactly. Recognition. He knew that tone. He had once used it himself. Malik hovered nearby, uneasy. Sir, we should. Ethan lifted a hand slightly. Silence. He studied her more carefully now. No visible injuries. No intoxication. No signs of manipulation. Just exhaustion deep enough to sink into bones. How old are you? He asked. 22. He nodded once. What's your name? Amara. The name lingered between them. Amara, he repeated thoughtfully. He stood upright again, rain running down his temple. You can't stay here. She looked down quickly. I know. Where are you going? I don't know yet. There it was again, that steady honesty. Most people would have invented something. She didn't. The estate gates behind her began to slide open automatically, responding to the car's security signal. The massive metal structure moved with mechanical grace. Amara instinctively stepped aside. She thought he was leaving, and maybe he was. Ethan turned toward the car, then stopped. He looked back at her. She had lowered her gaze again, preparing to stand and continue walking somewhere unknown. Something in him resisted the idea of driving away. It didn't make sense. He had board meetings at 8. A product launch in 3 days. Investors monitoring every move. He didn't stop for strangers in the rain. Yet here he was. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black business card. He stepped closer and held it out. She looked at it but didn't take it immediately. It's not charity, he said before she could misunderstand. She looked up again. I own a company in the city. If you need work, come tomorrow. 9 a.m. She blinked, confused. You don't even know me. I know you're not begging. The statement surprised her. He added, and you didn't ask for help. A small flicker crossed her face. Pride, maybe. She slowly accepted the card. Her fingers brushed his briefly. Cold. He ignored the strange awareness that sparked in that second. Coltech Global, she read softly. Her eyes widened slightly as recognition dawned. Even she had heard of Coltech. Everyone had. The company was practically reshaping logistics in West Africa. She looked at him again, this time with disbelief. You're Ethan Cole? He didn't respond verbally. He didn't need to. Thunder cracked again overhead. Tomorrow, he repeated. If you're serious about work. Her lips parted, unsure. Why? It wasn't suspicion. It was genuine confusion. He paused. He could have said, because I can. Or, because I feel like it. Instead, he answered honestly. Because someone once gave me an opportunity when I had nothing. Her breath caught slightly. That was the first crack in his armor. He turned and walked back toward the car. Malik quickly opened the door, clearly eager to leave. Before stepping in, Ethan looked back one final time. Don't be late, he said, and then he entered the car. The door shut. The engine hummed. The Rolls-Royce glided through the gates and disappeared into the estate, leaving Amara standing in the rain, but no longer invisible. For a long moment, she didn't move. She stared at the card in her hand as if it might dissolve. The gold lettering shimmered under the streetlight. Ethan Cole, Chief Executive Officer, Coltech Global. Her heart pounded. This couldn't be real. Rich men didn't stop for girls like her. They certainly didn't offer them jobs. Was it a test? A trap? Or something else? She looked at the massive estate beyond the gates. That world felt unreachable. And yet, for a brief moment, she had stood in it. The rain slowed to a gentle drizzle. Her body still ached. She was still cold, still homeless. But something had shifted. Hope, fragile, dangerous, flickered in her chest. She couldn't go back to her aunt. She couldn't wander all night. So she made a decision. She would walk to the city. It was over an hour on foot. But she had walked longer tonight. She tucked the card carefully into her small bag and adjusted the strap over her shoulder. "Don't be late," she whispered to herself. As she began walking down the paved road toward the city lights, she felt something unfamiliar guiding her steps. Not certainty, not security, but possibility. Inside the estate, Ethan stood by his bedroom window, looking out at the rain. Malik lingered near the doorway. "Sir," he said cautiously, "are you sure about this?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He watched the faint silhouette of the road beyond the gates, though she was long gone from sight. "I don't make impulsive decisions," he said finally. Malik nodded, but this felt like one. Ethan loosened his tie and removed his soaked jacket, draping it over a chair. His mind replayed the look in her eyes. Not desperation, not entitlement, strength, and something else. Loneliness. He recognized it because he carried it too. He turned away from the window. "Prepare the HR office tomorrow morning," he said calmly. "I want to personally review all entry-level candidates." Malik's brows lifted slightly. "Yes, sir." The house fell silent again. But Ethan didn't sleep easily that night, for reasons he refused to analyze. And across the city, walking beneath dim streetlights with blistered feet and a heart full of fragile hope, Amara whispered the name again. Ethan Cole. She had no idea that by this time tomorrow, she would step into his world, and he would never be the same again. Amara barely slept. She found a small covered bus stop near the edge of the city and curled into herself on the wooden bench, her bag clutched tightly against her chest. The rain had stopped sometime in the early morning, leaving the streets damp and glistening under pale sunrise light. Every time she closed her eyes, doubt crept in. What if it was a joke? What if security laughed at her? What if he didn't remember? But the card was still in her hand when she woke up, and it felt real. By 7:30 a.m., she was standing across the street from Coltech Global's headquarters. The building rose like a monument to power, 40 floors of reflective glass catching the morning sun. The company logo gleamed in bold silver letters near the entrance. Employees streamed in wearing tailored suits and heels that clicked confidently against marble floors. Amara looked down at herself. She had chosen her cleaner of the two dresses, a soft navy one with long sleeves. It was simple, slightly faded, but neat. She had washed her face at a public restroom and tied her hair back carefully. She didn't look like she belonged, but she walked forward anyway. The lobby was enormous. Cool air conditioning brushed against her skin as the glass doors opened automatically. The scent of polished wood and faint cologne filled the space. A large digital screen displayed company statistics in motion, global revenue, shipping routes, tech innovation metrics. People moved with purpose. Amara felt invisible again. She approached the reception desk, heart pounding. The receptionist, a sharply dressed woman with sleek braids, looked up briefly. "Yes, I'm here to see Mr. Ethan Cole." The woman's brows lifted slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" Amara hesitated, then slowly placed the black card on the desk. "He told me to come at 9. The receptionist studied the card. Something shifted in her expression. "Your name?" "Amara." She typed something quickly into her computer. Her eyes flicked up again, this time with curiosity. "Please have a seat." Amara blinked. That was it? No dismissal? No laughter? She sat on one of the leather chairs, gripping her bag tightly. The clock on the wall ticked toward 9. Her stomach twisted with nerves. Upstairs, in a corner office overlooking the entire city, Ethan Cole stood reviewing morning reports. But he wasn't focused. He had arrived earlier than usual, earlier than necessary. At 8:58 a.m., he glanced at his watch. At exactly 9 o'clock, his office phone buzzed. "Sir," his assistant's voice came through. "There's a young woman here named Amara." A pause. "She says you asked her to come." Ethan didn't allow any change in his tone. "Send her to conference room B." "Yes, sir." He ended the call and adjusted his cufflinks. He told himself this was simply evaluation. Opportunity offered. Nothing more. Amara followed a junior staff member down a wide hallway lined with glass offices. Everywhere she looked were people typing, presenting, negotiating. Large screens displayed global maps dotted with moving lights. The place felt alive, important. Conference room B was sleek and intimidating. Long oak table, floor-to-ceiling windows, leather chairs. She stood awkwardly near the door. Moments later, it opened. Ethan stepped in. Today, he wore a navy suit that fit him like it had been tailored to authority itself. His expression was composed, unreadable. But when his eyes landed on her, something softened, barely noticeable, but real. "You're on time," he said. "I didn't want to be late." "Good," he thought. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She obeyed. Up close in proper lighting, she looked different from the night before. Still tired, but steadier. He folded his hands on the table. "Tell me about yourself." The question felt heavier than expected. She didn't want to tell the whole story, but she didn't lie. "My parents died 6 years ago. I've been living with relatives. I worked at a tailoring shop. I don't have a degree." She met his gaze directly. "But I learn quickly." Ethan observed her carefully. No embellishment. No dramatic performance. Just truth. "What skills do you have?" "I organize well. I remember details. I don't give up easily." He almost smiled at that last one. "That's not a measurable skill." "It kept me alive," she replied quietly. The honesty startled him. He leaned back slightly. "Why should I hire you?" She inhaled slowly. "Because I won't waste it." That answer lingered in the air between them. Most applicants talked about ambition, money, growth. She talked about not wasting opportunity. Ethan stood. "Come with me." He led her out of the conference room and into the main operations floor. Employees glanced up as he passed, some surprised to see him walking beside a plainly dressed young woman. He stopped near a cluster of desks. "Sit here," he instructed, pulling out a chair. She obeyed, confused. He handed her a tablet. "This is a logistics report from our Ghana branch. There are inconsistencies in shipment timing that my senior analysts haven't identified yet." Her eyes widened slightly. "You want me to review it?" She hesitated. "I've never done something like this before." "Then start." He walked away. Staff exchanged curious looks. One whispered, "Who is she?" "No idea." Amara stared at the screen. Rows of numbers, shipment times, cost breakdowns. Her heart pounded. She didn't belong here, but she refused to freeze. She began slowly scanning patterns. Her mind worked differently, not formally trained, but observant. Years of helping at the tailoring shop had taught her to notice when fabric counts didn't match orders. Small inconsistencies stood out to her. 20 minutes passed, then 40. She leaned closer to the screen. There. 3 shipments marked as delayed due to weather. But the dates didn't align with recorded storm reports. She cross-referenced another column. The fuel charges were higher than usual. Her pulse quickened. She stood abruptly and walked toward Ethan's glass office. Security looked uncertain but didn't stop her. She knocked lightly. "Come in," he said without looking up. "I think I found something." He raised his gaze. She stepped forward and placed the tablet before him, pointing carefully. These shipments are listed as weather delays. But there were no storms reported those days. And the fuel expenses increased at the same time. He leaned forward, scanning. His expression sharpened. She continued, gaining confidence. If trucks were rerouted unnecessarily, someone could be inflating operational costs. Silence filled the office. Ethan looked at her slowly. Senior analysts had reviewed that file for 2 weeks. She found it in under an hour. Sit, he said quietly. She obeyed. He pressed a button on his desk. Call internal audit immediately. His tone had shifted, colder, precise. Within minutes, senior staff rushed in. Ethan didn't mention that she found it, but his eyes flicked toward her once. Approval. Subtle, but undeniable. After the room cleared, he turned back to her. You've never studied logistics? No. He nodded once. You start today. Her breath caught. As what? Temporary executive assistant. Her eyes widened. That's too high for someone like me. There is no someone like you here, he said evenly. There is competence. Or there isn't. A beat of silence. You are competent. Her throat tightened. No one had ever said that to her before. Report to my assistant. She'll set up your credentials. He paused. And Amara. Yes. Don't let anyone make you feel small here. Something about the way he said it felt personal. She nodded slowly. I won't. As she stepped out of his office, whispers followed. Executive assistant? She doesn't even look qualified. Amara heard them, but this time something inside her stood taller. She had earned that chair, earned that tablet, earned that moment. Upstairs, Ethan watched through the glass wall as she returned to the desk, already reviewing another file. He told himself this was efficiency, nothing more. But he couldn't ignore one undeniable truth. For the first time in years, something in his company, and perhaps in his life, felt unexpected, alive, and he found himself looking forward to tomorrow. The office began to change after Amara arrived. Not dramatically, not in ways that would make headlines, but subtly. Ethan noticed it first. She didn't hover or try to impress him. She didn't overstep. She didn't flinch when he corrected her. And she certainly didn't giggle the way some assistants before her had done, trying to charm their way into influence. She worked, quietly, efficiently, carefully. By the end of her first week, she had reorganized a scheduling system, color-coded executive priorities, and flagged 2 contracts that required urgent legal review. She never bragged about it. She simply placed files on his desk with small sticky notes. Needs signature. Clause 4.2 conflict. Review page 18. It was precise, controlled, intelligent, and Ethan found himself watching her more often than he intended. It was 9:47 p.m. Most of the staff had gone home. The operations floor was dim, lit only by desk lamps and the glow of city lights bleeding through glass walls. Amara sat at her desk, typing steadily. Ethan stepped out of his office, loosening his tie. You're still here. She looked up immediately. You are too. A pause. He almost smiled. That's different. Why? I own the building. And I work in it. He studied her. There was no attitude in her tone, just calm logic. He stepped closer, leaning against the edge of her desk. You don't need to stay this late. I want to. Why? She hesitated, fingers resting lightly on the keyboard. Because if I leave early, I go back to nothing. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Silence settled between them. He straightened slightly. You don't have somewhere to stay? She stiffened. He had noticed. Of course he had noticed. She'd been wearing the same 2 dresses in rotation. She left before most employees and arrived before them too. She carried her bag everywhere. I'm managing, she answered carefully. That wasn't an answer. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't like unanswered questions, but he also didn't like crossing lines. I'll have HR arrange company housing for temporary staff, he said evenly. Her head snapped up. No. The sharpness surprised both of them. He raised an eyebrow. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It feels like it. There it was. Pride. He recognized it instantly. You think I brought you here out of pity? He asked quietly. Her eyes flickered. I don't know why you brought me here. The honesty hit harder than accusation. He stepped closer. I brought you here because you're capable. She searched his face, as if trying to determine whether that was truth or performance. You don't trust easily, she said suddenly. The shift caught him off guard. That's not relevant. It is. He crossed his arms. Explain. She stood slowly, no longer seated beneath him but eye level now. You watch everyone. Even when you're not speaking, you're analyzing. You don't laugh fully. You don't relax. You don't let anyone stand too close. The air changed. Employees had described him as intimidating, strategic, ruthless. No one had ever described him as guarded. You've known me 1 week, he said, and I observe well. That he knew was true. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, a reminder of the night they met. You're wrong, he said finally. She tilted her head slightly. Am I? His jaw tightened. You trust too easily. The words were reflex, defensive. She didn't look offended. I don't trust easily, she said softly. I just don't have the luxury of assuming everyone will hurt me. The sentence landed like a quiet blow, because he did assume that. Always, people wanted access, influence, money, position. He had learned that lesson the hard way. You're naive, he said. And you're afraid, she replied. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. They were standing too close now. Close enough for him to notice the faint scent of soap on her skin. Close enough for her to see the faint scar near his left eyebrow. Neither stepped back. You think I'm afraid? He asked quietly. I think you don't believe anyone stays unless they're gaining something. He didn't answer, because she wasn't wrong. 2 years ago, Ethan had been engaged. Her name was Vanessa. Beautiful, charismatic, ambitious. He had met her at a business conference in London. She admired his drive. He admired her intelligence. Or so he thought. 3 months before their wedding, he discovered she had been leaking confidential information to a competitor in exchange for stock options. Not because she needed money, but because she wanted leverage. When he confronted her, she didn't deny it. It's just business, Ethan. That sentence had sealed something inside him permanently. Love was weakness. Trust was risk. Emotion was liability. Since then, he kept people at calculated distances. Employees were assets. Partners were contracts. Feelings were distractions. Until now. Until a girl in a navy dress stood in his office and saw through him. You don't know my history, he said finally. You don't know mine either, she replied gently. The tension softened. Something in her tone wasn't combative. It was understanding. He looked at her more carefully. You were thrown out, he said quietly. Her throat tightened. Yes. And you're still standing. Yes. He nodded once. I respect that. The admission was rare, valuable. Her expression shifted, something warmer now. I don't need saving, she said. I'm not trying to save you. Then what are you trying to do? He hesitated. That question felt more dangerous than it should. I'm trying to make sure talent isn't wasted, he answered. A safe answer. Professional. But not entirely true. She held his gaze a moment longer, then stepped back slightly, breaking the charged proximity. I'll finish these reports and go, she said. He watched her sit again, the tension easing but not disappearing. As he turned to return to his office, she spoke again. Ethan? He paused. Yes. You don't have to assume everyone will betray you. The quiet sincerity in her voice unsettled him more than accusation would have. He didn't respond. He couldn't. He walked back into his office and closed the glass door. But he didn't sit immediately. Instead, he stood there, staring at the city lights. She had unsettled him, and he didn't like being unsettled. That night, as Amara left the building, security stopped her gently. Miss Amara? Yes. Mr. Cole arranged temporary housing nearby. Company policy for executive staff. Her chest tightened. He said to clarify its protocol. Not charity. She stared at the envelope handed to her. A key card. An address. He hadn't forced help on her. He had reframed it. Respected her pride. A small smile touched her lips despite herself. Upstairs, Ethan stood by the window again. He watched her walk across the parking lot. This time she didn't look lost. She looked purposeful. He told himself this was responsibility. Leadership. Nothing personal. But as thunder rolled softly across the sky again, he felt something unfamiliar crack along the walls he had built so carefully around himself. And for the first time in years, he wondered what it would feel like to let someone in. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Heavy cream envelope. Gold embossing. Private charity gala for the Westbridge Innovation Fund. An event attended by investors, politicians, global executives, and media. Amara placed it neatly on Ethan's desk. You're scheduled to attend Saturday at 7, she said professionally. Black tie. He didn't look up immediately. Clear my Sunday morning, he replied, scanning a document. Already done. A brief silence. Then he added casually, You'll attend with me. Her pen paused mid-note. I'm sorry. He finally looked up. I need a date. Her brows lifted slightly. You have an entire social circle for that. I don't mix business and my social circle. That sounds healthy. His lips twitched faintly. It's strategic. She folded her hands calmly. I'm not sure I'm the right person for that setting. You represent the company. I'm your assistant. Your executive staff. There was something deliberate in the way he said it. She hesitated. I don't own black tie attire. That's solvable. And I don't belong in rooms like that. His gaze sharpened slightly. You belong anywhere you decide to stand. The words hit her harder than expected. She looked away first. I'll consider it. He nodded once, as if the matter were settled. But neither of them acknowledged the subtle shift that had just occurred. Saturday arrived faster than she expected. Amara stood in front of the mirror inside the company-provided apartment, staring at herself in disbelief. The gown had been delivered that morning. Deep emerald satin, off-shoulder, flowing but structured, elegant without being loud. She had almost refused when Ethan's assistant arranged it. But the dress fit perfectly, as if someone had anticipated her measurements without asking. Her hair was styled into soft waves pinned to one side. Minimal jewelry, simple heels. She looked different, not transformed, just revealed. For a moment, she imagined her mother seeing her like this. You carry yourself well, her mother used to say. Amara touched the scarf tucked safely in her drawer and whispered, I hope so. A knock sounded at the door. Her pulse jumped. She opened it. Ethan stood there in a tailored black tuxedo. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked momentarily speechless. He had seen her in navy dresses, in office lighting, behind computer screens. But tonight, she looked like she had always belonged in rooms with chandeliers. His eyes traveled from her face to the gown and back again, not inappropriately, but undeniably aware. You're late, she said softly, breaking the silence. His jaw tightened slightly, regaining composure. Am I? 2 minutes. A faint smile touched his lips. Unacceptable. He extended his arm. Shall we? She slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow, and something electric passed between them. The gala was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel downtown. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, a string quartet playing near the entrance. Cameras flashed as prominent figures stepped onto the red carpet. When Ethan exited the car, photographers immediately called his name. Ethan, over here. Mr. Cole. He stepped out calmly, composed as always. Then he turned and offered his hand to Amara. The moment she emerged, the atmosphere shifted. Not because she was flashy, but because she carried quiet grace. Whispers began almost instantly. Who is she? That's not Vanessa. Is that his new girlfriend? Ethan felt her tense slightly beside him. He leaned down subtly. Stay steady. I am steady, she murmured. And she was. Inside, the ballroom glittered under golden light. Waiters floated between guests carrying champagne flutes. Conversations buzzed like low static. Several executives approached immediately. "Ethan, good to see you. Impressive quarter results." He introduced her simply. "This is Amara." No title, no explanation, just her name, and somehow that felt intentional. Throughout the evening, she observed carefully, absorbing names, dynamics, alliances. At one point, a woman in a silver gown approached, eyes sharp. "Ethan," she purred, placing a hand lightly on his arm. "You disappeared after London." Amara felt the subtle shift in his posture. "Business required attention," he replied coolly. The woman's gaze slid toward Amara. "And this is Amara," he repeated evenly. The woman smiled thinly. How refreshing. It wasn't a compliment. Amara recognized condescension when she heard it. But she didn't react. Instead, she extended her hand calmly. "It's a pleasure." The woman seemed almost disappointed by the composure. After she walked away, Amara spoke quietly. "Former social circle? Former mistake." She glanced at him briefly. He rarely volunteered personal admissions. "You don't owe anyone explanations," he added. "I wasn't asking for one." A pause. "You were uncomfortable," he said. "I was observing." He studied her profile under the chandelier light. "You're not intimidated." "I've been hungry," she replied softly. "This is just expensive lighting." He almost laughed. A real one, not the polite corporate version. And that was when it happened. He stopped seeing her as someone he had helped. He started seeing her as someone who stood beside him. Equal. Grounded. Unshaken. Later in the evening, the host invited key donors onto the stage for recognition. Ethan was among them. He stepped up under the bright lights. Applause filled the room. As he gave a short speech about innovation and access to technology, his eyes scanned the crowd instinctively. They found her, standing near the back of the ballroom, watching him, not with admiration for wealth, but with understanding. And for a split second, his voice faltered almost imperceptibly. He finished smoothly, but something had shifted internally. After the formal program ended, music filled the ballroom. Couples drifted onto the dance floor. Ethan approached her. "Dance." That wasn't phrased as a question. It wasn't. She raised an eyebrow. "You don't strike me as someone who enjoys dancing." "I don't." "Then why?" He extended his hand anyway. "Because I want to." The honesty disarmed her. She placed her hand in his. They moved onto the dance floor, bodies maintaining respectful space at first. His hand rested at her waist, firm, steady. She placed her other hand lightly on his shoulder. They moved slowly, not showy, just present. Up close, the world felt quieter. "You handled tonight well," he said. "You expected me not to?" "I wasn't sure." "Do you doubt me often?" "No," he admitted. "Then why do you look surprised?" He hesitated. "Because you don't seek attention. And that surprises you? In this world?" "Yes." She tilted her head slightly. "I didn't come from this world." He looked down at her. "I know." There was no judgment in his voice, only acknowledgement. A silence stretched between them, not awkward, just charged. "You're different tonight," she said softly. "How?" "You're not calculating." His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "That's dangerous." "For who?" "For me." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Her breath caught almost imperceptibly. The music slowed. They were closer now. Too close. He could see the faint shimmer of light on her skin. She could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath the tuxedo. For a moment, the rest of the ballroom faded. No investors. No whispers. No expectations. Just two people who had met in the rain. "You're staring," she murmured. "I'm evaluating," he replied automatically. She smiled faintly. "Liar." He didn't deny it. Across the room, several board members observed them carefully. Investors noticed too. The headlines would come tomorrow. Photos were already circulating. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because something undeniable had surfaced. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't mentorship. This wasn't convenience. It was something far more complicated. And far more dangerous. As the music ended, they stepped apart slowly. But the space between them felt thinner than before. Outside, when the car pulled away from the hotel, silence filled the interior. Not uncomfortable, just full. "You did well tonight," he said finally. "So did you." Another pause. He looked at her, really looked. "You weren't out of place." "I know." That confidence made something in him settle. When the car stopped in front of her building, neither moved immediately. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me." The words were simple, but they landed deep. He didn't answer right away, because he was still realizing it himself. He wasn't just seeing her. He was starting to need her presence. And that realization, it unsettled him more than any business risk ever had. She stepped out of the car. The door closed gently. He watched her walk inside before telling the driver to move. And as the city lights blurred past the window, one thought refused to leave him. He had brought her to that gala as a strategic decision. But he had left with something far less controlled. He had left with the growing certainty that the walls around his heart were no longer secure. And he wasn't sure he wanted them to be. The headlines hit before sunrise. Amara didn't see them first. Ethan did. He was already in his office at 6:15 a.m., reviewing market projections when his phone began vibrating repeatedly across his desk. One notification, then 3, then 10. He ignored them for 30 seconds. Then he picked it up. The first headline glared at him in bold letters. Billionaire CEO steps out with mystery woman. Who is she? The second was worse. From nowhere to the ballroom. Is Ethan Cole's new companion a strategic liability? He opened the article. There they were. Photographs from the gala, him stepping out of the car, helping her onto the red carpet, dancing. Zoomed images. Speculation. Fabricated narratives. She is rumored to have joined Coltech only weeks ago. Sources claim she lacks formal credentials. Insiders question whether personal involvement could compromise corporate leadership. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't care about gossip. He cared about implications. Coltech's stock fluctuated based on perception. And perception was now shifting. His office phone rang. Board member. He declined the call. It rang again. Another board member. He answered this time. Yes. Ethan. The older man's voice came sharp through the line. What is this? A photograph. Don't be clever. Investors are asking questions. And she works for you. Yes. Is there a conflict of interest? No. Pause. You're certain? I don't make uncertain decisions. Silence lingered. You'll need to address this. I will. He ended the call without another word. Amara saw it when she arrived at the office. 2 junior staff members were whispering near the elevators. Their conversation stopped abruptly when she approached. She felt it immediately, the shift. Eyes lingered longer. Smiles looked thinner. When she reached her desk, her computer screen was already lit with notifications. Her stomach dropped. She clicked the first link. Her photo filled the screen. Her name wasn't mentioned, just mystery woman. But the implication was clear. Unqualified. Unknown. Possibly opportunistic. Her chest tightened. For a moment the room felt smaller. Old feelings resurfaced. The ones from her aunt's house. You don't belong here. You're taking up space that isn't yours. She closed the browser tab slowly. Breathe. She could handle whispers. She had handled worse. But this wasn't a kitchen conversation. This was national media. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She declined it. It buzzed again. She turned it off. Her office door opened. Ethan stood there. He had already read the articles. Already anticipated the ripple effect. Their eyes met. You've seen it, he said. Yes. Pause. Are you all right? The question surprised her. I've survived worse than headlines. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. This isn't about gossip. The board will push. For what? For distance. The word landed heavily. She straightened slightly. You should give it to them. His gaze sharpened. I didn't say I would. But you should, she replied quietly. This affects your company. It is my company. And I work for it. The air grew tense. He moved closer to her desk. You think I brought you here to discard you at the first sign of pressure? She swallowed. No. Then stop speaking like I did. His tone wasn't harsh, but it was firm. Outside the glass walls, several employees were pretending not to watch. He lowered his voice. You are not a liability. That's not what they think. I don't care what they think. You have to. Silence fell, because she wasn't wrong. He did have to care, but not in the way they expected. By noon, an emergency board meeting was scheduled. Amara tried to continue working, but concentration slipped through her fingers. She heard fragments of conversation as executives passed by. Image risk, public perception, power imbalance. The phrase made her stomach twist. Power imbalance. As if she had manipulated something. As if she had planned this. Her pride flared. She stood abruptly and walked to Ethan's office. He was reviewing briefing documents. You should remove me, she said. He didn't look up immediately. No. You didn't even consider it. I already did. Her chest tightened. And I decided against it. She stepped closer. This company matters to you. Yes. And I matter less. His eyes snapped up. Don't finish that sentence. Why? She challenged softly. Because it's true? He stood now, tension radiating from him. No. Because you're wrong. Silence. He walked around his desk slowly. You think I don't see what you've done here? She didn't respond. You've increased operational efficiency by 12% in 3 weeks. You've reorganized my executive calendar. You identified fraud my analysts missed. He stopped in front of her. You are not here because of me. You are here because you are capable. Her throat tightened despite herself. And if they demand I step back? She whispered. He held her gaze. Then they can demand. The certainty in his voice made something inside her steady. But fear still lingered. I don't want to be the reason you lose anything, she said softly. He answered without hesitation. You're not the reason I lose. You might be the reason I gain. The words hung between them. Dangerous. Honest. Before either could say more, his assistant knocked lightly. The board is ready. The boardroom was colder than usual. Long polished table. 10 senior members seated. Screens displaying financial metrics. But today the topic wasn't profit. It was perception. One board member leaned forward. Ethan, the media narrative suggests personal involvement with an employee. And? He asked evenly. And that raises questions about judgment. My judgment increased this company's value by 400% in 5 years. That's not the issue. Then clarify the issue. A woman near the end of the table spoke. The issue is power dynamics, public trust, the idea that someone without credentials suddenly occupies executive proximity. His jaw tightened slightly. She earned her position. According to you. According to performance metrics. A few members exchanged glances. Another spoke carefully. We recommend distancing, reassignment, quiet transition. Silence. Ethan folded his hands calmly. No. The word was quiet, but final. The room stiffened. You're willing to risk market perception? I'm willing to defend merit. That's not how media works. That's not my concern. A beat of tension. You're emotionally involved, someone said flatly. The accusation lingered. Ethan didn't flinch. My personal life does not interfere with operational decisions. That wasn't a denial. His gaze sharpened. It wasn't meant to be. The room fell silent. He stood slowly. If investors question my leadership because I refuse to dismiss competent staff due to gossip, then they misunderstand this company. A pause. I built Coltech on innovation and fairness. Not fear. No one spoke. Because they knew. He had the controlling shares. He had the final authority. The meeting adjourned without resolution. But the message was clear. He had chosen. Outside the boardroom, Amara stood near the window, pretending to review her tablet. She looked up when the door opened. He walked toward her. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "I said no." Her breath caught. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Employees nearby watched carefully. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't hide his stance. "You are staying." The words were simple, but public, and intentional. Something in her chest shifted. No one had ever fought for her before. Not like that. Not when it cost something. "I don't know how to repay that," she whispered. His expression softened slightly. "You don't." Silence. Then he added quietly, "Just don't let them define you." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears back quickly. "I won't." And for the first time since the headlines broke, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt chosen. Not rescued. Chosen. That evening, as the office slowly emptied, Ethan stood beside her desk again. "Media cycles fade," he said calmly. "Scars don't," she replied softly. He looked at her carefully. "You're stronger than this." She met his gaze. "I know," and she did. But what neither of them said out loud was the truth pulsing beneath everything. This wasn't just professional loyalty anymore. It was personal. And once feelings step into public light, they don't go back quietly. Outside, the city buzzed with speculation. Inside, something deeper was solidifying. Not scandal. Not weakness. Something far more dangerous. Attachment. The scandal didn't disappear overnight, but it stopped growing. New stories replaced old ones. Media cycles shifted. Investors moved on to fresher drama. Yet something had changed between Ethan and Amara. Something that no article could manufacture and no board could vote away. They were no longer pretending this was just professional alignment. And that awareness made everything more fragile. It started with small things. He began asking if she had eaten. She began reminding him to sleep. He sent her documents at midnight with notes that read, "Review when rested." She brought him coffee without being asked. Not because it was her job, but because she knew how he liked it. 2 sugars. No foam. Their conversations grew longer, less guarded, more personal. One evening, long after the office had emptied, rain began tapping gently against the glass walls again. Not violent like the night they met, just steady. Ethan stood near the window in his office, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up. Amara knocked softly and stepped in. "You're still here," she said. "So are you." She walked closer, holding a file. "I finished the compliance revisions." He took it but didn't open it. Instead, he looked at her. "Sit." She did. There was something different in his tone tonight. Less command. More weight. The city lights flickered below them. "I've been thinking," he said quietly. "That's usually dangerous." He exhaled softly, almost a laugh. "Yes, it is." Silence stretched between them. Not awkward, just charged. "When I built this company," he began, eyes drifting toward the skyline, "I told myself I would never allow anything to compromise it." She listened carefully. People become liabilities when emotion clouds judgment. "And you don't like clouds," she said gently. "No." A beat. "But lately," he paused, searching for words he wasn't used to speaking. "Lately I don't feel clouded." She didn't interrupt. "I feel clearer." Her breath caught almost imperceptibly. He turned to face her fully now. "I don't know when it shifted. Maybe the night of the gala. Maybe before that. But somewhere between you arguing with me about logistics errors and standing in that ballroom like you owned it." His voice lowered. "I stopped seeing you as someone I was responsible for." Her heart pounded. "And started seeing me as what?" she asked softly. "As someone I don't want to build this life without." The words settled heavily in the air. He hadn't planned them. There was no script, no dramatic setup, just truth. Her chest tightened. "Ethan, I don't need saving," she said, almost reflexively. His gaze didn't waver. I'm not trying to save you. She stood slowly, closing some of the space between them. Then what are you doing? I'm choosing you. The simplicity of it stole her breath. No grand gestures. No kneeling. No fireworks. Just choice. Intentional. Steady. She searched his face for hesitation. There was none. Only vulnerability, quiet, rare, exposed. You don't trust easily, she whispered. I don't. And this is not easy. Silence. Rain continued tapping gently against the glass. You could lose control, she said. I already have, he admitted softly. That confession carried more weight than any declaration of love. Her throat tightened. You don't even know everything about me. I know enough. What if I disappoint you? You won't. You can't guarantee that. No, he agreed. But I can guarantee that I won't walk away at the first sign of imperfection. The subtle reference to his past didn't go unnoticed. She stepped closer now. They were inches apart. You're afraid, she said quietly. Yes. Of what? That I will care more than you do. The honesty startled her. She hadn't expected that. I already care, she said before she could overthink it. The words felt like stepping off a ledge. He stilled. Say that again. She swallowed. I already care. There it was. Mutual. Unprotected. Real. For a long moment, neither moved. The air felt thinner. Charged. He lifted his hand slowly, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. His fingers brushed lightly against her cheek, warm and steady. Her eyes fluttered closed for half a second. You feel like peace, he said quietly. The words sent a tremor through her. I've never been someone's peace before. You are. She opened her eyes again. And you feel like safety, she whispered. That nearly broke him, because no one had ever described him that way. Not ruthless, not powerful, not intimidating. Safe. His thumb traced gently along her jaw. Amara. She leaned in slightly, not out of desperation but certainty. Their foreheads touched first. Slow. Intentional. A shared breath. And then he kissed her. Not rushed. Not possessive. Not hungry. It was steady. Deliberate. As if he were memorizing the feeling. Her hands rested lightly against his chest, feeling the strong, controlled heartbeat beneath her palms. For once, he wasn't calculating. He wasn't planning outcomes. He was simply present. When they pulled apart, the world felt different. Quieter. Bigger. You realize this complicates everything, she said softly. Yes. And you don't care? I care, he corrected gently. I just care about this more. Her eyes glistened slightly. She laughed softly through the emotion. You're terrible at romantic speeches. I wasn't aiming for romance. What were you aiming for? Truth. She nodded. I don't want to lose myself in someone else's world, she said. You won't. You can't promise that. I can promise I won't let you shrink. The conviction in his voice steadied her. And I won't let you hide, she replied. A small smile touched his lips. That sounds like a threat. It is. He rested his forehead against hers again. Good. Later that night, they stood on the balcony outside his office. The rain had stopped. The city glowed beneath them. I used to think love was a distraction, he admitted quietly. And now I think it might be alignment. She leaned lightly against the railing. I don't want to be something that makes you weaker. You don't. And I don't want to be chosen out of impulse. You weren't. He turned to her fully. I don't make impulsive decisions. You stopped in the rain for me. That wasn't impulse. What was it? He looked at her carefully. Recognition. Her heart swelled at that. You saw yourself in me, she said softly. Yes. And now I see someone stronger than I was. Emotion flickered across her face. You're not used to saying things like this, are you? No. Does it scare you? Yes. She smiled gently. Good. He raised an eyebrow. Why? Because that means it matters. Silence settled between them again. But it was no longer heavy. It was certain. After everything, the rain, the scandal, the boardroom tension, they had arrived here. Not by accident. Not by rescue. By choice. And choice is powerful. He reached for her hand. Intertwined their fingers. No audience. No cameras. Just them. I don't know what this becomes, he said quietly. We don't have to know yet, she replied. Pause. But I'm not walking away. Neither am I. And for the first time since the night she was thrown into the storm, Amara felt something unshakable settle in her chest. Not hope. Not survival. Love. Real. Earned. Chosen. It started with a phone call she almost didn't answer. Amara was reviewing shipment data when her personal phone, the one very few people had, buzzed against her desk. Unknown number. She ignored it. It rang again. She silenced it. It rang a third time. Her stomach tightened. Slowly, she picked it up and stepped into the hallway. Hello. There was breathing on the other end. Then a voice she hadn't heard in months. Amara. Her spine went rigid. Aunt Lydia. For a moment, the hallway blurred. Yes, Amara replied evenly. Her aunt's tone was suddenly soft. Fragile. My daughter. I saw you on television. Of course she did. The gala footage had been replayed everywhere. Articles still floated online. Her name had finally surfaced publicly after the boardroom drama. You look well, her aunt continued carefully. Very well. Silence stretched. How did you get this number? Amara asked. That's not important. It was important. But Amara didn't push. Her aunt cleared her throat. I've been meaning to call. To apologize. The word felt foreign. Apologize. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow. For what? Amara asked quietly. Pause. For how things ended. How things ended. Not for years of belittling. Not for locking her outside that night. Just how it ended. Amara closed her eyes briefly. What do you want? She asked gently. Her aunt didn't answer immediately. Then, can we meet? She didn't tell Ethan at first. She told herself she didn't need to. This was her past. Her closure. But that evening, as they stood in his office reviewing contracts, he noticed her distraction immediately. You missed a figure, he said calmly. She blinked. I did. Yes. She never missed figures. He set the tablet down. What's wrong? She hesitated, then decided she was done handling everything alone. My aunt called. The air shifted. The one who? Yes. His jaw tightened subtly. What does she want? To meet. When? Tomorrow. Silence. You're not going alone, he said immediately. I am. Amara. She doesn't get to intimidate me anymore. That's not what I'm worried about. She looked at him carefully. I need to do this myself. His protective instinct battled with his respect for her autonomy. Where? A cafe near my old neighborhood. His eyes darkened slightly. I'll be nearby. She almost smiled. You don't trust her. I don't trust anyone who forced you into the rain. There was no anger in his tone. Just fact. She stepped closer. I'm not that girl anymore. I know. Then let me handle it. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. But if you call, I'm there. I know. The cafe looked smaller than she remembered. Time had a way of shrinking places that once felt overwhelming. She arrived 10 minutes early, not because she was nervous, but because she wanted to walk the street first. The same street she had walked in the rain. The same corner where she had once waited for bus fare she barely had. Her chest tightened, not with pain, with distance. She had survived. When her aunt entered the cafe, Amara almost didn't recognize her. Lydia looked older, thinner, less sharp around the edges. They stood facing each other for a moment. You look different, her aunt said quietly. I am. They sat. Awkward silence hovered between them. Her aunt fidgeted with her handbag. I didn't know things would turn out like this, she began. Like what? With you working for that billionaire. On television. In newspapers. Amara held her gaze steadily. You didn't know I'd survive. Her aunt flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? Silence. A waiter passed by. Neither ordered anything. I was overwhelmed back then, her aunt said carefully. Money was tight. You were another responsibility. I was 16. Her aunt swallowed. I did what I thought was necessary. You locked me outside in a storm. The bluntness made the older woman's hands tremble slightly. I thought you'd come back in the morning. Amara studied her. The apology was partial. Still defensive. Still softened. I walked for hours, Amara said quietly. I could have disappeared. Her aunt's eyes flickered. But you didn't. No, she didn't. Silence stretched again. Then her aunt's voice lowered. Your uncle lost his job. There it was. The truth behind the call. We're struggling. Amara didn't react immediately. I wouldn't have come if it wasn't serious. Of course you wouldn't have, Amara thought. What do you need? She asked calmly. Her aunt hesitated, pride fighting desperation. Help. The word hung heavy. Financial help. There it was. Not reconciliation. Not remorse. Need. Amara leaned back slowly. All the nights of hunger. All the quiet tears. All the insults disguised as discipline. She could let bitterness speak now. She could refuse. She could walk away the way they once did. Instead, she surprised even herself. I forgive you. Her aunt blinked. That's not what I forgive you, Amara repeated softly. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. Confusion crossed her aunt's face. You're angry. I was, Amara corrected gently. I'm not anymore. Her aunt's eyes filled slightly. You've changed. Yes. Pause. I won't return to that house, Amara continued calmly. And I won't pretend we're suddenly close. Her aunt looked down. But I won't let you starve either. She reached into her bag and placed an envelope on the table. Inside was a bank check. Enough to stabilize them. Not enough to create dependency. Her aunt stared at it. You don't owe us this. I know. Then why? Amara's voice was steady. Because I refused to become what hurt me. Silence fell thick between them. Tears slipped quietly down Lydia's face. I was hard on you. Yes. I thought it would make you stronger. It did, Amara replied softly. But not the way you intended. Her aunt looked at her differently now. Not as a burden. Not as a girl. As a woman. I'm sorry, she whispered. This time without excuse. And somehow that mattered more. Amara stood slowly. I hope things improve. Will you visit? A beat. No. Not cruel. Not bitter. Just honest. She turned and walked toward the door. Outside, Ethan stood leaning against his car across the street. He wasn't hiding it. When she stepped out, their eyes met. He searched her face immediately. Are you okay? She nodded. Yes. Did she ask for money? Yes. And I gave it. His brows lifted slightly. You didn't have to. I know. He stepped closer. Do you regret it? She thought for a moment. No. Why? She looked up at him, calm and certain. Because I'm not who they made me feel like. His chest tightened at that. What did she say? She apologized. Do you believe her? Another pause. She needed something, but I think she meant part of it. And that's enough? It's enough for me. He studied her carefully. No shaking hands. No tears. Just quiet strength. You're remarkable, he said softly. She smiled faintly. No. I'm free. That hit deeper than he expected. He reached for her hand instinctively. She let him. You didn't let it harden you, he said. No. You could have. I know. He looked at her with something close to awe. I thought I was protecting you from the world, he admitted quietly. She squeezed his hand gently. You were. A beat. But I was protecting myself long before you. He smiled, not arrogantly, proudly. As they drove away, the old neighborhood shrinking behind them, Amara leaned back in her seat. The rain clouds from that night months ago felt distant now. She hadn't returned to beg. She hadn't returned to prove anything. She had returned to close a door. And she walked away lighter, stronger, whole. Beside her, Ethan realized something important. He didn't fall in love with a girl he rescued from the rain. He fell in love with a woman who walked back into her storm and stood unshaken. Ethan didn't rush decisions. He built companies slowly, strategically, brick by brick. But loving Amara hadn't followed strategy. It had followed truth. And once he admitted that to himself, everything else became clear. He was going to marry her. Not someday. Not eventually. Soon. He started planning quietly. Not a spectacle. Not a media circus. He didn't want headlines. He wanted a moment. One that belonged only to them. He chose the beach. Not the crowded resort side filled with tourists and photographers, but a private stretch along the coast an hour outside the city. Quiet. Untouched. Open sky meeting endless water. He remembered something she once said on his balcony. I like places that feel bigger than fear. The ocean felt like that. On Saturday evening, he told her they were going for a drive. She didn't question it. She trusted him now, not blindly but intentionally. As the car moved along the coastal highway, golden sunlight stretched across the horizon. You're unusually quiet, she observed. I'm thinking. That's dangerous. It usually is. She smiled faintly, turning her gaze toward the water flashing between palm trees. When they finally arrived, the sky was painted in soft oranges and pinks. The beach was nearly empty. Waves rolled in steady rhythm. Salt hung lightly in the air. She stepped out of the car and inhaled deeply. This is beautiful. He watched her instead of the ocean. Yes, he said quietly. She walked ahead toward the shoreline, heels in hand, bare feet pressing into cool sand. The wind tugged gently at her hair. For a moment she looked like freedom itself, and he felt something settle fully in his chest. This wasn't infatuation. This wasn't adrenaline. This was home. They walked along the water in comfortable silence. The sun lowered slowly. You've been different lately, she said softly. How? Certain. He glanced at her. I am. She stopped walking and turned to face him. That sounds serious. It is. The wind shifted slightly, lifting the edge of her dress. She searched his face carefully. You're not about to fire me, are you? She teased gently. He almost laughed. Never. The word came too quickly, too firmly. Her smile softened. Then what? He took a slow breath. For a man who negotiated billion-dollar contracts without blinking, his pulse was unsteady now. Do you remember the first night we met? He asked. In the rain. Yes. I remember thinking you looked irritated. I was. She laughed lightly. But you stopped anyway. I didn't understand why. And now. He stepped closer. Now I know. The waves crashed gently behind them. You weren't a distraction, he continued. You were a turning point. Her breath caught. Ethan. I built everything in my life alone, he said steadily. And I was proud of that. I thought independence meant strength. He moved closer still. But somewhere between late nights at the office and you standing in that ballroom like you belonged there, I realized something. She swallowed softly. I don't want to build the rest of my life alone. Silence stretched between them, not empty, but full. You changed me, he said quietly. Not by asking, not by demanding, just by being. Her eyes shimmered slightly in the fading light. I didn't plan for this, he admitted. I don't even like how vulnerable it makes me. That sounds like you, she whispered. He smiled faintly. But I've never been more sure of anything. He stepped back slightly, and then slowly, intentionally, he lowered to one knee. Her breath left her in a sharp gasp. The ocean seemed to pause. The world narrowed. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not oversized, not flashy, just elegant. I don't have a speech, he said honestly. You always have speeches. Not for this. The vulnerability in his voice made her chest ache. I spent years building companies, he continued. But you built something in me I didn't know was missing. A tear slipped down her cheek. He opened the box. A delicate ring caught the last light of the setting sun. Simple diamond, timeless setting. I don't want to rescue you, he said firmly. And I don't want to own you. Her heart pounded. I want to stand beside you. Equal. Always. His voice softened. Amara, will you marry me? The waves crashed louder this time, as if urging her to answer. She stared at him, the man who once stood in the rain analyzing her like a problem to solve, now kneeling in sand, unshielded, choosing her. Her laughter broke through tears. You didn't even wait for me to prepare a dramatic response, she said breathlessly. Should I? No. She stepped closer. Yes. He blinked. Yes, he repeated. Yes. The word felt like destiny sealing itself. Relief flooded his expression, real, unfiltered. He slipped the ring onto her finger. Fit perfectly. How did you know my size? She whispered. I pay attention. She shook her head, laughing softly through tears. You're impossible. He stood slowly. For a second, they just looked at each other. Then she wrapped her arms around him tightly. He held her as if anchoring himself to something permanent. I was once thrown into a storm, she whispered against his chest. And now, he asked quietly. Now I'm choosing the calm. He kissed her deeper this time, not tentative, not questioning, certain. They stayed on the beach until the sky darkened into deep blue. She sat beside him on the sand, staring at the ring under moonlight. It feels surreal, she admitted. Does it scare you? Yes. Good. She smiled, nudging him lightly. You're terrible. He grew more serious. You can still change your mind. She turned to him sharply. Do you want me to? No. Then don't suggest it. He exhaled softly. I just don't want you to feel trapped. She cupped his face gently. I walked away from people who tried to control me. Her gaze softened. I'm walking toward you. The certainty in her tone steadied him completely. You're not marrying me because I'm wealthy, he said. She laughed lightly. If I wanted wealth alone, I wouldn't argue with you about work schedules. He smiled. You're marrying me because you chose me when it was inconvenient. That hit deeper than anything else. You defended me when it cost you something. His throat tightened. And because when you look at me, you don't see someone to fix. He rested his forehead against hers. I see someone to grow with. The ocean stretched endlessly before them. No cameras. No board members. No headlines. Just two people who met in the rain and built something steady from it. As they walked back toward the car, fingers intertwined, she glanced at him. What now? He smirked slightly. Now we plan a wedding. She raised an eyebrow. Small. Agreed. Private. Definitely. No media. Absolutely. She squeezed his hand. And no over-the-top extravagance. He paused. Reasonable extravagance. She laughed, the sound carried off by the wind. The storm that once defined her life had delivered her here. Not rescued, not dependent, chosen. And for the first time since that night in the rain, the future didn't feel uncertain. Felt intentional. The wedding was not what the media expected. There were no press releases, no magazine exclusives, no viral countdown, and that was exactly how they wanted it. Ethan could have rented a palace. He could have shut down an entire island. But when he asked Amara what she wanted, she gave him a simple answer. Peace. So that's what they built. The ceremony was held at a private garden estate overlooking the ocean, the same stretch of coastline where he had proposed. White roses lined the aisle. Soft candlelight glowed as the sun dipped toward the horizon. A string quartet played gentle instrumentals of songs that meant something only to them. Fewer than 100 guests attended. Board members, a few close friends, some employees who had become family, and children from the Youth Outreach Center. Amara had quietly begun volunteering at months earlier. She insisted they be there. They're part of the future, she said. Ethan didn't argue. He had learned that when she spoke about purpose, she meant it. Inside the bridal suite, Amara stood in front of a full-length mirror. Her dress was elegant, off-white satin, fitted but flowing, long sleeves with delicate lace detailing. Nothing loud, nothing excessive, Sewn into the inner lining of the gown was a small strip of fabric from her mother's old scarf. Hidden, but present. She touched the spot gently. "You made it," she whispered to the memory of her parents. There were no bridesmaids in matching chaos. No dramatic entourage. Just one close friend adjusting her veil. "You're calm," her friend observed. "I am. You're not nervous?" Amara smiled softly. "I've survived worse than marriage." They both laughed. But beneath the humor was truth. This wasn't a leap into uncertainty. It was a step into something she had already chosen fully. Outside, Ethan stood at the altar beneath a white floral arch. He wore a tailored ivory tuxedo jacket, black trousers, minimal detailing. Clean, timeless. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't fidgeting. But his chest felt tight. Not from fear, from magnitude. Malik, his longtime driver and now trusted friend, stood beside him. "You look serious," Malik murmured quietly. "I am." "You nervous?" Ethan considered it. "No, a beat. I'm aware of what this meant. Aware of how far he had come from the man who once believed love was a liability." The music shifted. Guests rose slowly. And then she appeared. At the end of the aisle. For a moment, the ocean breeze seemed to pause. Amara walked forward alone. Not because she had no family, but because she chose to walk into this life on her own strength. Each step was steady. Each breath controlled. Ethan's throat tightened unexpectedly. He had seen her in ballrooms, in offices, in rain. But this was different. She wasn't the girl he met by accident. She was the woman he chose deliberately, and she was choosing him back. When she reached him, they stood facing each other, close enough to hear each other breathe. "You look certain," she whispered softly. "I am." She smiled. "Good." The officiant kept it simple. No overly dramatic speeches, just intention. When it was time for vows, Ethan spoke first. "I spent years building a life that looked powerful," he began steadily. "But power without partnership is hollow." His eyes never left hers. "You walked into my life in a storm, not asking for rescue, not asking for pity, just standing." A soft ripple of emotion passed through the guests. "You taught me that strength doesn't need to dominate. It needs to align." His voice lowered slightly. "I promise to stand beside you, not ahead of you, not above you, beside you." Amara's eyes shimmered. When it was her turn, she didn't unfold a paper. She had memorized every word. "I once believed survival was the highest form of success," she said gently. "But you showed me that safety can be shared." A few guests discreetly wiped tears. "You didn't choose me when it was easy. You chose me when it was inconvenient." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "I promise never to shrink beside you, and never to let you hide behind your strength when you need softness." Her voice softened. "I promise to build with you, grow with you, and stand steady, even when storms return." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me." And just like that, they were husband and wife. The kiss was not dramatic. It was deep, certain, earned. Applause filled the garden as the ocean stretched endlessly behind them, not as a symbol of wealth, but as a reminder of how vast life could be. The reception was warm and intimate. Soft lighting, live music, laughter, no press, no headlines, just joy. At one point, Ethan pulled her onto the dance floor again, just like the gala night. Only this time, there were no whispers, no scrutiny, just love. "You're not calculating," she teased softly. "I retired that habit. Fully." He tilted his head slightly. "Mostly." She laughed, resting her head briefly against his shoulder. Across the reception, several of the children from the outreach center watched them with bright eyes. Amara noticed. She squeezed Ethan's hand. "Ready?" she asked quietly. "For what?" She led him toward the center of the floor, tapped her glass gently. The room quieted. Ethan looked at her curiously. She hadn't told him about this part. "I grew up without much stability," she began calmly. "And I know what it feels like to be invisible." Her voice didn't tremble. It was steady. So instead of wedding favors tonight, Ethan and I are announcing something. She glanced at him. His brows lifted slightly, intrigued. We're launching the Rain Foundation. The name hit him immediately. The Rain. The night they met. Our foundation will provide housing, education grants, and job placement programs for young adults aging out of unstable homes. A soft murmur of approval spread through the guests. She looked at Ethan gently. And we're funding the first 5 years privately. He blinked once, surprised, then slowly smiled. You planned this? He murmured under his breath. I did. He leaned closer. You're remarkable. She shook her head softly. No, I'm grateful. He took the microphone gently from her. And she forgot to mention, he added smoothly, that the board already approved corporate partnership this morning. Her eyes widened slightly. You knew. I suspected. They looked at each other, amused, aligned. The room erupted in applause. Later that night, long after guests had left and candles had burned low, they stood alone by the shoreline. Her heels were off. His jacket was draped over his arm. You realize this is permanent, she said softly. Yes. You don't feel trapped? He looked at her carefully. No. Pause. Do you? She smiled gently. I feel anchored. The moon reflected across the water. He slipped his arm around her waist. Do you ever think about that night? He asked quietly. In the rain. Yes. Sometimes. What do you feel? She thought for a moment. Grateful. For what? For not giving up. He nodded slowly. If I hadn't stopped. You would have, she interrupted gently. You don't know that. She looked up at him. I do. He studied her face in the moonlight. Why? Because you're not as cold as you pretend to be. He almost laughed. That rumor still exists? Occasionally. He leaned down and kissed her temple softly. I'm glad it rained that night. She smiled. So am I. They stood there for a while, listening to waves crash softly against the shore. No fear. No scarcity. No uncertainty. Just partnership. Years later, the Rain Foundation would grow into something global. Young adults who once felt discarded would walk across stages holding degrees funded by the program. Housing centers would carry plaques that read, built from a storm, sustained by love. But on this night, none of that mattered yet. All that mattered was this. A girl once thrown into the rain. A man who stopped his car. 2 lives that collided not by rescue, but by recognition. And a love built not on need, but on choice. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.